Boy in the Bayonet, Part 2. The crowd was full of exclamations of praise and admiration, but a tense quiet enveloped them as Company A came from columns of four into line for volley firing. This was a real test. It meant not only grace and precision of movement, signalness of attention and steadiness, but quickness tempered by self-control. At the command of the volley rang forth like a single shot. This was again the signal for wild cheering, and the blue and white streamers kissed the sunlight with swift, impulsive kisses. Hannah and little sister drew closer together and pressed hands. The A adherents, however, were considerably cooled when the next volley came out, badly scattering with one shot entirely apart and before the rest. Bud's mother did not entirely understand the sudden quietening of adherents. They felt vaguely that all was not as it should be, and the chill of fear laid hold upon their hearts. What if Bud's company, it was always Bud's company to them, what if his company should lose? But of course, that couldn't be. Bud himself had said they would win. Suppose, though, they didn't. And with these thoughts, they were miserable until the cheering again told them that the company had redeemed itself. Someone behind Hannah said, "They are doing splendidly. They'll win, they'll win." Yet, in spite of the second volley, Company A, in columns of four, had executed the right oblique in double time and halted amid cheers, then formed left front into line without halting. The next movement was one looked forward to with much anxiety on account of its difficulty. The order was marching by 4s to 6 or unfixed bayonets. They were going at a quick step, but the boys' hands were steady. Hope was bright in their hearts. They were doing it rapidly and freely, when suddenly from the ranks there was a bright gleam of steel lower down than it should have been. A gasp broke from the breasts of Company A's friends. The blue and white dropped disconsolately, while a few heartless ones who wore the other colors attempted to hiss. Someone had dropped his bayonet, but with muscles unquivering, without a head turn, the company moved on as if nothing had happened, while one of the judges, an army officer, stepped into the wake of the boys and picked up the fallen steel. No two eyes had fallen half so quickly as Hannah and little sister's, who the blunderer was. In the whole drill there had been but one figure for them, and that was Bud. Bud, and it was he who had dropped his bayonet. Anxious, nervous, and with the desire to please them, perhaps with a shade too much of thought of them looking on with their hearts and in their eyes, he had fumbled and lost all he was striving for. His head went round and round, and all seemed black before him. He executed the movements in a dazed way. The applause, generous and sympathetic, as his company left the parade ground, came to him from afar off. And like a wounded animal, he crept away from his comrades, not because their reproaches stung him, for he did not hear them, but because he wanted to think what his mother and little sister would say. But his misery was nothing to that of the two who sat up there amid the ranks of blue and white, holding each other's hands with a despairing grip. To Bud, all the rest of the contest was a horrid nightmare. He hardly knew when the three companies were marched back to receive the judge's decision. The applause that greeted Company B when the blue ribbons were pinned on the members' coats meant nothing to his ears. He had disgraced himself and his company. What would his mother and little sister say? To Hannah and little sister, as to Bud, all of the remainder of the drill was a misery. The one interest they had in it failed, and not even the dropping of his gun by one of Company E when on the march, halting in line, could raise their spirits. The little girl tried to be brave, but when it was all over, she was glad to hurry out before the crowd got started to hasten away home. Once there, and her tears flowed freely, she hid her face in her mother's dress and sobbed as if her heart would break. "Don't cry, baby, don't cry. Lammy, dis ain't de last time there was going to be a drill. Bud'll have a chance another time, and then he'll show 'em something. Bless you. I 'spect he'll be a cap'n." but this consolation of philosophy was nothing to little sister. It was so terrible to her, this failure of Bud's. She couldn't blame him. She couldn't blame anyone else, and she had not yet learned to lay all such unfathomed catastrophes at the door of fate. What to her was the thought of another day? What did it matter to whether he was a captain or a private? She didn't even know the meaning of the words. But little sister, from time she knew Bud was a private, thought it was much better than being a captain or any of those other things with a long name, so that settled it. Her mother finally said about getting the supper, while little sister drooped disconsolately in her own little splint-bottomed chair. She sat there weeping silently until she heard the sound of Bud's step, then sprang up and ran away to hide. She didn't dare face him with the tears in her eyes. Bud came in without a word and sat down in the dark front room. "That you, Bud?" asked his mother. "Yes'm." "Better come now, supper's pretty nigh ready." "I don't want no supper." "You better come on, Bud. I reckon you's mighty tired." He did not reply, but just then a pair of thin arms were put around his neck and a soft cheek was placed close to his own. "Come on, Buddy," whispered little sister. "Mammy and me know you didn't mean to do it, and we don't care." Bud threw his arms around his little sister's and held her tightly. "It's only you and Ma I care about," he said, "though I am sorry I spoiled the company's drill. They say B would have won anyway on account of our bad firing, but I didn't want you and Ma to be proud." "We is proud," she whispered. "We's most prouder than if you'd won." And pretty soon she led him by the hand to supper. Hannah did all she could to cheer the boy and to encourage him to hope for next year, but he had little to say in reply and went to bed early.